Hello, Blue Jays fans, and welcome to episode 272 of the Jays from the Couch radio podcast, brought to you by, of course, jaysfromthecouch.com. That's right, we're back for another week of Blue Jays talk for everybody. Whether you're watching live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, join the conversation. Send us your questions, send us your comments. Even if you agree or disagree with anything we have to say, send it on in and we'll fire it up there on the screen. Of course, if you've missed the live filming, recording, if you will, streaming, I suppose is the proper word, don't worry, because the audio version is available anywhere you find quality podcasts. You'll find Jays from the Couch, so give us a subscribe and a rate and review and all of that fun stuff. It helps us out a lot. I'm your host, as always, Sean Doyle. You can follow me on Twitter at Doyle JFtC. We've got a great episode for you. Last week we started with our fake Blue Jays news segment, and we're going to bring that back again because it was a lot of fun. Emphasis on the word fake Blue Jays news. We're going to talk about the Blue Jays suddenly, all of a sudden turning things around, making things very interesting in the playoff picture. And we've got Marcus Simeon, Robbie Ray, and Vlad Jr. We've got a lot to talk about. So I think it's only appropriate at this time to introduce my co-hosts. As always, host of the On Feck Circle, Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Steve Feck, good evening to you.
Good evening, Sean. Thanks for having me.
Oh, listen, I can't do this without you. As well, I can't do this without host of Sunny Side of the Dome, Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Karen Suter. Good evening, Karen.
Good evening, Sean. Good evening, Steve.
All right, so we've got a great episode. We're going to have some fun here in a second with our fake Blue Jays news segment, where if you missed it last week, first of all, shame on you. How dare you? I kid. But you can always go back on our YouTube channel and our Facebook page as well, I suppose, in our Twitter feed, and check out last week's episode. But we introduced a new segment where we kind of model ourselves after the Weekend Update SNL segment where we just present fake news. It's not real. It's just for fun, to make you laugh, and just like SNL, it may not make you laugh. But that's okay. So we've come up with some fake Blue Jays news, and leading us off this hour, our top story, I turn it over to you, Steve Feck.
Thank you, Sean. With Canadian federal elections just 2 weeks away, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's campaign issued an unusual press release today. As a measure to rally his sagging poll numbers, Trudeau has pledged to sport a Blue Jays cap at every campaign stop between now and Election Day. The release said, Blue Jays fans have not lost faith despite the team being 4 games out of a playoff spot. This has inspired Prime Minister Trudeau, who will proudly wear his Blue Jays cap to show his faith not only in the team, but also in closing the 5-point deficit in recent polls. Jays from the Couch could not confirm the rumor that Bloc Québécois candidate Yves-François Blanchet will wear a Quebec Nordique sweater at the next debate. Another strange media comment came out of a Zoom call Toronto President Mark Shapiro conducted with local press corps today. Shapiro claimed that given the current Canadian to U.S. dollar exchange rate of 0.798-07832, 867-5309, the Blue Jays are actually only 3.1923 games out of a wild card spot. When reporters questioned Shapiro's logic and stated that this was not how MLB would calculate the final standings, Shapiro snapped, well, damn it, that's how they should do it. We pay salaries in U.S. dollars and generate Canadian dollar revenues. We were on the road for a year and a half. We deserve a break. And picking up on the cues of their boss, GM Ross Atkins claimed he has made twice as many trades as the media has reported, and manager Charlie Montoyo stated his contract extension actually will go until October 18th, 2023, not 2022, as previously reported. Karen?
Thank you, Steve. So, in other fake news, Robbie Ray, the Blue Jays re-signed him in the offseason. They got him for 1 year, $8 million, and right now that's looking like an absolute steal. And he's just been so solid all year long, even though, unfortunately, maybe unfairly, he didn't make the All-Star team, but that was probably more about there being 4 other Blue Jays position players already going to the game and every team needing to be represented. But as the season goes on and some guys seem to wear down, Robbie Ray just seems to be getting stronger, and he's really pitched himself into the Cy Young conversation. So it's not just him. There's other candidates that are being considered, of course, the Yankees, Garrett Cole, Lance Lynn of the Chicago White Sox, but Robbie Ray is right there, and you look at all the stats that everybody knows about, strikeouts, earned run average, all of these things, and his stats are really right there with these other contenders. Well, after doing some digging, it seems that Robbie Ray is far and away the American League leader in a little-known, little-used stat called WTPERA. And before you go looking that up, what that stands for is weighted tight pants ERA. I think Blue Jays fans who have been watching the Jays all season can agree that Robbie Ray excels far and away beyond anybody else in this way. And between that and everything else that he's doing, I'd say he's your front runner. Sean, over to you.
Well done, Mr. Ray. All right. Congratulations to you and the clubhouse attendant who refuses to give you a bigger size. All right. In other fake Blue Jays news, the Toronto Blue Jays have just announced that George Springer will wear a special uniform next season. Of course, we all know that George Springer has spent a lot of time on the IL, and then he comes back, of course, runs into a wall, hurts his knee, and then just today, George Springer fouls a ball off his knee. Hopefully he's okay. However, to be preemptive, the Toronto Blue Jays have announced that George Springer will be wearing a suit of armor circa 989 AD. That's right. It's a unique, new idea. And when reached for comment, George Springer said, "How the hell am I supposed to run in this?" And to which Ross Atkins replied, "We're paying you $150 million. Figure it out." In other Blue Jays news, Ken Rosenthal reported that the Toronto Blue Jays attempted to offer an extension to Marcus Simeon and will do so with Robbie Ray as well. Now, Jays from the Couch, in our never-ending effort to bring you the most up-to-date and accurate information, we did some digging. And it turns out we got the text messages sent by General Manager Ross Atkins to Marcus Simeon. And the reason why they failed, as it turns out, is Ross Atkins is bad at grammar. That's right. Ross Atkins' text said, "We would like you to resign in Toronto." To which Marcus Simeon said, "Ouch, that hurts." Hyphens are important, folks. Come on. Re-sign, not resign. Get it right. Ross Atkins is learning that lesson the hard way. Don't be a Ross Atkins. All right, and finally, in fake Blue Jays news, Lourdes Guriel Jr. has been on a tear of late. Lots of home runs, a big grand slam. Runs driven in. Everybody's excited. Well, Jays from the Couch decided to sit down with Lourdes Guriel, and here's what he had to say. "I'm just happy to be relevant again. The other day, I was sitting in the clubhouse chair, and the clubhouse attendant came over with a watering can and tried to pour water on me, thinking I was a houseplant. So it's just good to not be a houseplant." And that has been Fake Blue Jays News, brought to you by jaysfromthecouch.com. All right. Again, It's all in fun. If I had hair like Lourdes Guriel, I would flaunt it as well. I do not, probably because I would look stupid. Anyway, here we are. Now we're going to get serious here, okay? Everybody's got their serious hats on. Here we go. In all seriousness, the Toronto Blue Jays have had a recent run, sweeping the Oakland A's in 2 of the 3 games cannot be described as a pitcher's duel. And then, of course, the final game shutting out the Oakland A's, winning 3 in a row. And then, of course, today, just today, the Blue Jays, thanks to Marcus Simeon, who I'm sure we'll discuss this week, again, blowing out the Yankees, which even in a year where there's no playoffs, like just forget about playoffs, they blew out the friggin' Yankees. Like, I mean, and the Yankees, of course, play in a stadium where, 4-year-olds can walk up to the plate and hit home runs, right? I mean, let's be real. You know what I mean? It's like, anyway. So here we are now. Blue Jays coming into play, 4 games out of a wild card spot, beating the Yankees, one of the teams holding said wild card spot. So, Karen, I'm going to start with you. After the run in August, where we were beating our heads against a wall and, like chomping on our nails and worried about playoffs, and Steve, of course, sitting there smugly saying, "Told you so." They weren't going to make it. Karen, I'm going to ask you first. What are your reactions now with regard, not just that they won 4 in a row and swept a team contending for the playoffs? You're right, 5 in a row. Excuse me. The Yankees beat the Yankees. Not just that aspect of it, but what it means in that they are contending, legitimately making a run at this wild card spot.
Yeah, it's so exciting for the fans. And I mean, but like you said, back in August when they were cold, it wasn't good, obviously, but I felt as a fan, having watched baseball for years and having watched these players for the last few years and the talent that they have and the ups and downs of this season, I had a gut feeling that as cold as they were for a lot of August, they weren't going to go out, like finish the season with a whimper and not get hot again. I was not then, nor am I now, guaranteeing that they're going to make the playoffs. I mean, they're still far back. The odds are still against them. They're still, and by the way, the Red Sox lost. So they've now gained ground on the Yankees and the Red Sox. So they're, I think, 3 games. Thank you. Hi, Matt. Yes, 3 games out of the second wild card and 3.5 games out of the first wild card. And I mean, that's doable. They've got enough games. They could make up that gap, but it's not just about what they do. It's about what the other teams do as well. I mean, the Jays, just by virtue of winning most of the remaining games against the Yankees, could probably catch and pass the Yankees, but they don't play the Red Sox anymore. They don't play the Mariners anymore. They're done against the Oakland A's, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, they need to stay hot. And as much as they were hot and then they went cold and now they're hot again, they could, knock on wood, go cold again. I'm hoping not, obviously, but there's no guarantees. But it's great to see them put up this fight and stay in it, because they're supposed to be contenders, and at least now they're behaving like contenders. I was at the game on Friday, and I was sitting there. My husband and I went with 2 other couples. One of the other couples left when they were losing 8-2, and the 4 of us stayed until the end. But it's just the whole atmosphere there, it was just very dead. It felt like, this is it. They're not playing well. They're going to lose. They're going to be out of the race officially pretty soon. And they pick themselves back up off the mats. And, whether they get in or not this year, I think this team has the talent that they could stay hot and do it. But there's no guarantees. But either way, it's so much fun to watch, and fingers crossed, maybe they can sneak in. It would be.
So, Steve, before I throw it to you, I kind of threw you under the bus there and said that, I told you so, because back in August, it looked like you were right. It looked like this team was not a playoff team. But here we are over the last week or so, and as Matt says, they're making me hope again. And thanks to Matt for tuning in on YouTube and sending in your comments and questions as always, Matt. We really appreciate it. And for all of anybody else out there, you can do so live as well. But Steve, is there reason to hope again? Or are you still in the they're not making it?
They're not making it. They're going to come up short, and it's going to become a season of not "I told you so," but a season of "what if." You cannot hope to make up the type of ground that the Blue Jays have needed to make up since the trade deadline. When you had an opportunity earlier to put yourselves maybe a couple of games ahead of the teams that were struggling, rather than vice versa, you're struggling and now you're trying to catch up. Mathematically, there's 26 games left. So I looked at the last 30 games. Over the last 30 games, the Yankees were 20 and 10. The Red Sox are 14 and 16. The Mariners are 18 and 12. The Jays are 17 and 13. Well, actually 18 and 12, with the win today. So there is improvement over teams you need to catch. They've been better than the Red Sox. They've been better. They haven't been better than the Mariners. They're about keeping pace with the Mariners. And the Yankees, who I still think have a big fork in them. It's going to be an even greater September when the Yankees completely implode and fall apart. I really, honest to God, I don't have any sort of formulas or proof that that's going to happen. It's just talk about hope. Matt talked about hope. I hope it's going to happen, but I really think it's going to happen. Had this happened earlier, had they started making advances and given themselves a little bit of buffer, perhaps what's going to happen in September with the Jays would actually put them over the top. But I think it's just a matter of running out of time.
Right. And that's like 3 games, really, in the grand scheme of things. And you just said, I believe you said 26 remaining. That's not that much when you think about it. But and this is what's such a pain, is that when your team goes on a winning streak, other teams win too. There was that period where the Yankees were good. Like, what? They were good, right? And Oakland as well went on a little bit of a streak there too. So it's not just about what you can do and your team can do, but it's also what other teams do against other teams as well. And of course, that's not even talking about the fact that Toronto still has to play Tampa Bay. But Karen, I'll go to you.
As we're talking about how much ground they have to make up and how many games are left, it reminds me that, of course, Blue Jays talk on Twitter and all of that. And somebody that I follow brought up that, what year was it? Was it 1987? When the Jays were leading back then, there were no wild cards, but they were leading the division by 3 games with only 7 to play. And they managed to completely collapse and just fall right out of the race. So if they can be up 3 with only 7 to play and not make it, surely they can be back 3 with 26 to play and maybe get in.
Yep. And I think you may be remembering a previous episode of the On Feck Circle where the Feckless Wonder himself mentioned that 1987 season. And not that like Tampa Bay is suddenly going to go through a collapse of that nature or any nature, really. They're just so good. But it is possible, and I think that's the thing that Blue Jays fans here can cling to, is that it is possible that their team will make the playoffs. And the reason I'm emphasizing that is because if you look at last season, before we move into the extension talk. If you look at last season, 2020, the Blue Jays were a playoff team, right? But a 60-game season. And I don't want to say making the playoffs is easy, of course. But in the context of the 2020 season, making the playoffs, any team could have, in theory, right? You run off 60 good games. I mean, obviously not the Baltimore Orioles or the Pittsburgh Pirates. No offense, Steve, our Pittsburgh correspondent. But in a 60-game span, anything can happen, right? Blue Jays make the playoffs. Okay. Making the playoffs in 2021 in a full season, that's a completely different bird. And I think it's important because the Blue Jays are fighting for a playoff spot. And if they can make that postseason berth in a real season, and again, I hate calling it not a real season, but you know, everybody knows what I mean. If they can do that, I think that is far more enjoyable, first of all, but it means far more for the progress in the next few years of this baseball team. So that's why, to me, I'm really watching this playoff hunt. Obviously, it's great to see your team in the playoffs, and nobody wants to see the Blue Jays in the playoffs more than me. I get it, but there's that other element to it as well, that what it could mean, not just for this season, because it means they're legit, but also 2022, 23, and however else many years we get before Vlad becomes a free agent. Listen, I don't want it. It's going to happen, though. That is my gut, ugly feeling. I feel like it's going to happen. Regardless, let's put that aside, and we'll talk about other extensions, because we have a few years to talk about the Vlad one. So Marcus Simeon, the Blue Jays signed for 1 year, $18 million. Apparently, they've made not one but two attempts to extend him. I don't know. If I'm Marcus Simeon, I hold out as long as possible. He's going to enter free agency as a shortstop, a second baseman, or a third baseman. He could do all three of those, and he's going to enter there more productive than any other free agent on the market. Of course, you're not going to jump on an extension. So, Steve, I'm going to start with you, because I know you had some kind of, this is going to sound like a complete shock to all of our listeners, but you had some kind of against the grain ideas about the Marcus Simeon signing, right? So I'm going to start with you. What do you do with Marcus Simeon? I mean, I know the Blue Jays, like, you got to be desperate. Like, sign now, please, please, please. And Simeon's like, easy, guys, not going to happen. But if you're the Blue Jays, what do you do?
You make him a qualifying offer and hope to God that he doesn't take it. Because again, now also, like, the elephant in the room is the CBA, which is being negotiated. Odds are we're going to have some sort of delay in spring training getting going before everything gets all ironed out. So a lot of these bigger deals are going to be impacted by that. But my hesitations and my reservations about Marcus Simeon as a Blue Jay, despite a fantastic year that I admit I didn't think he could duplicate what he did in 2019. He surpassed it. It still does not make the Blue Jays a better team in the long run. What did it do this year? Kevin Biggio had to move from second base to third base. And for injuries, various reasons, it did not work out. It cost the Blue Jays production and performance in the field as well as at the bat. Money that was committed to Marcus Simeon could have been committed to, everybody say it with me, Taiwan Walker, people that we already knew what he did, and he's shown for the most part all year. I mean, everybody's all ready to say, oh, Taiwan had a bad start. See, the Blue Jays were right. No. Relax. Okay. Taiwan Walker, early in the year, back when I was talking earlier about how they could have taken advantage of a struggling league as a whole to kind of put some padding between themselves and the other teams. Taiwan Walker could have made a big difference early in the season. So to me, it's still, despite the wonderful season that he's had, despite the fact that he has helped a Blue Jays lineup learn how to hit in situations, it's still overall a bad signing. So if you let him go, you're going to have all that money that you would have to commit to him to fill the hole at third base, to fill a hole in the bullpen, fill a hole as a starter, wherever you want to spend the money, give it to Robbie Ray. Okay, wherever you want to give the money, give it to an extension on one of the young core guys that might want to sign for an extension. I mean, Vladdy's not because of his agent. I think Bo Bichette won't, because between his dad and his agent, he's not going to offer an extension. But, and this will make Karen smile, if you really believe in Lourdes Guriel, give him an extension. He would jump at it. I mean, I think he's the kind of player, I think Teoscar would jump at it if you really believe Teoscar Hernandez is the real deal. And I think he's kind of proven that he is. Use that Marcus Simeon money to ensure your future 2, 3, 4 years down the road, and not just worry about, bringing Marcus Simeon back. Has he been great? Yes. Is he going to be worth the money as far as the overall impact on the team? He will not be.
Right. And I don't know that anybody would say that signing Marcus Simeon has turned out poorly for the Blue Jays, because let's be real, if Marcus Simeon is not a Toronto Blue Jay in 2021, they are not where they are right now. I mean, they don't even beat the Yankees today, let alone the rest of the season. However, Karen, Steve does have a point in that Kevin Biggio has been the victim of this Marcus Simeon signing, regardless of how good Marcus Simeon has been. Kevin Biggio has suffered because of the signing. So if you're looking at, it would be nice to have Marcus Simeon. Sure, it would. No problem. However, Kevin Biggio can slide into second. And maybe you don't share that Marcus Simeon money as Steve suggested, but you actually look at third base, maybe use some money there. Is it, Karen, in your opinion, is it really important that the Blue Jays extend Marcus Simeon, that they keep him in Toronto? And I guess kind of the implied question there is, do they really need him next year?
I mean, that's such a tricky question. Marcus Simeon has helped the Blue Jays win in a number of ways. Now, I'm a big fan of Kevin Biggio, and I think we all saw that he was a square peg in a round hole trying to play third base. Now, let's not forget, excuse me, it's not like Kevin Biggio has been with the Blue Jays for all this time. He's been injured for a lot of the season. Now, can anybody say with any degree of confidence that if the Jays don't sign Simeon and Biggio plays second base instead of third, that he doesn't have those injuries? We don't know that. So to say that Marcus Simeon cost Kevin Biggio a year of his development, you can't assume that A caused B just because they happened in the same season. Like I say, I like Biggio. I really like what he brought to the table in 2019 and 2020. I would love to see him fully rebound and be healthy and return to that in 2022. I mean, there's so many different scenarios that the Jays, I was looking at their payroll for this year. You know how much money they've got coming off the books this year between Tanner Roark, Troy Tulowitzki. They're paying Troy Tulowitzki $4 million this year, for Pete's sake. Tyler Chatwood, Brad Hand, Kirby Gates, David Phelps, even some money to, I forget, Joe Panic. Like the list just goes on and on. Corey Dickerson, it would be great to have him back, but if he doesn't come back, that's a chunk of money that the Blue Jays aren't paying him next year. Like they have some financial flexibility. There is no reason why they can't retain all of these guys. And I mean, again, and this is something we've talked about a little bit behind the scenes. Now, I don't know if this would work out, but it's one scenario at least. I've always speculated that Marcus Simeon, a condition on his end of coming to the Blue Jays is that they keep him in the middle of the infield. Second base, fine. Shortstop, no problem, but that's it. He doesn't want to move to third base. And if I'm right about that, what are his reasons? Was it about the perceived marketability when he becomes a free agent again in another year? So what if the Blue Jays go to him and say, we'll give you $100 million over the next 5 years. You're going to be set for life financially. We want you playing third base. And we're moving Biggio back over to second. That's another way that they could do it. And their infield, would be set for the next several years with Vlad at first and Bichette at shortstop and Biggio at second and then Marcus Simeon at third. And you'd have a third baseman that if they ever decided, you know what, we can't have Bichette play shortstop anymore, then you can flip-flop Simeon and Bichette if you'd rather try him at third base. It just gives you so many different options. And you've got a proven MLB player. My mind is drawing a blank here. The prospect, Jordan Groshans, that he's looked good in the minor leagues, and maybe he's the Blue Jays' third baseman of the future, but we do not yet know that he will be a successful MLB player if they retain Simeon and if they can bring Biggio back healthy as their second baseman. Then you've got four guys who have had different degrees of success playing Major League Baseball, and you don't have to gamble your future on, well, what about this prospect? What about this prospect? You're moving forward. You're solidifying contending years and maybe going deep into the playoffs. So that's what I think that they can do and should do.
Right. And realistically speaking, and I have actually a piece coming out tomorrow at Jays from the Couch about Marcus Simeon and whether or not, how would the Blue Jays be if he left. And one of the conditions under which I would retain him is if he agrees to play third base. That's and I think you're right, Karen, in that he made it clear he wants to be a middle infielder. Cool. You're 30 years old. We want to extend you. This might be the last contract you get. We are going to pay you. We're going to back up the Brinks truck for you. But you better be willing to play third base. If that's the case, cool. Because I don't think Marcus Simeon ruined Cavan Biggio this year. I think the Jays front office did, in forcing him into a role that actually may have caused his injury, because watching all those balls go right by him.
Yep.
Right? And for the record, I'm a huge Cavan Biggio fan. But regardless, so that's the only condition. Cavan Biggio needs to go back to second. And stop messing around with him. Stop putting him all over the diamond, trying to force him into being a super utility. He has a position, and he's good at it. That's it. So Marcus Simeon, happy to have you back, but I call the shots now, not you, right? And I think the other thing is the Blue Jays have it's interesting to me that they tried to get Marcus Simeon first and then hope to at some point approach Robbie Ray. But I think we can all agree, because we're running out of time here, but I think we can all agree that needs to be a priority. Extending Robbie Ray, because without Marcus Simeon, the Blue Jays can still function just fine. Without Robbie Ray in this rotation, there is no playoffs next year.
Right.
So that is the priority. And Karen, I'm going to throw it to you because we're just about out of time here, but I seem to have let it slip my mind that every week we throw out the stat of the week. So I'm going to throw it to your fake news segment and ask you to remind our listeners, because I have a challenge for them. So what was that stat that you cited earlier?
Yes, the WTP-ERA, the weighted tight pants ERA.
There you go. There's our stat of the week. And I challenge all of our viewers and our listeners to go around the league, watch some baseballs, and tell us who leads the league in all of those letters. Whatever. You lost me at weighted tight pants. Wait, ERA, right? There
Yes.
you go. See, you didn't lose me. I had it. So there you go. Go around the league and see if anybody is better than Robbie Ray at that statistic. So there we go. We're at the end of episode 272. And I got to say, I'm going to keep the fake Blue Jays news going because it's just too much fun not to. So I hope if you're listening at home, whether it's on YouTube or our Facebook channel or Twitter, I encourage you. Sign up for notifications and all that stuff so you don't miss it. Or whether you're listening on Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you find a podcast, I want to say, I hope you enjoy. I really do hope you enjoy the fake Blue Jays news as much as we do. And I encourage you to tune in next week where we'll have a bunch more. Karen and Steve, thank you both. Of course,
Thank you.
as always, for joining me on this crazy little thing we call a podcast. I appreciate it. And of course, for our listeners, do not miss the On Feck Circle, Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, hosted by the Feckless Wonder himself, Steve Feck, and Thursdays, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Sunny Side of the Dome, hosted by Karen Suter. Both must watch, must tune in, whatever you want to call it. Don't miss it. So, for Karen, for Steve, let me see, I don't know, let's say for Marcus Simeon. Hey, my guy. This is Sean Doyle. You can follow me on Twitter at Doyle JFtC. Hoping life gives you a juicy fastball down the middle and you don't miss it. Take care.